I read because I love to read, not because I feel pressured by social media to read, and not because I put a specific goal on myself either. Hello, my friends. My name is Nellie, and I love to read. And if you love to read, we should be friends. I am an absolutely feral reader. I am already at 146 books for this year, and I kind of wanted to peel back the curtain for this a little bit. There's a lot of talk about in order to be a book creator, you should be reading X amount of books, or on the other side, there's also a lot of criticism for being somebody who reads a lot. And so I kind of wanted to have a discussion, tell you guys my thought and my experience, and also how I'm able to read as much as I read. Now, before I go into that, I just want to give a disclaimer that just because I read this much throughout the year does not mean that I think that other people need to read this amount. It also does not mean that I look down on anybody else or think that other book creators should read as much as I do. It's not that at all. And I just wanted to have this discussion because it's something I think a lot about. And it's also something that I see other people online commenting and asking, how do you read so much? Or even just asking, do you really read as much as you say? How are you able to have time? Especially because I am a mom of two. That is probably one of my most frequent questions I get in real life among my family and among my friends. They're like, Nellie, how are you even able to read that much when I know you're busy with two kids? And they're just like, I can't even read one book a month. So I wanted to start from there. And I also wanted to talk about whether I think it's sustainable or feasible to read as much as I read. And I also wanted to talk about, for those of you who want to read more per month, give you guys some tips and tricks on how I do it and also how to increase your reading speed. Again, just a side note reminding you that I can only speak to my experience, I can only speak to what I like to do and my own priorities, because that really is what it comes down to, is priorities. So I feel like the best way to start out in this video is taking you guys through an average day and telling you the pockets that I find in my day as a mom of two kids who go to two different schools, and as a stay-at-home mom, how I find time to read while still keeping my house clean, while still taking my kids to go do things, while still being present with my family, because that's going to be my number one no matter what. So first things first, I wanted to take you guys through my routine, obviously, as somebody who reads as much as I do. Right now, with reading 146 books, I am reading just under 4 books a week. And so how do I do that? That's a great question. I wanted to talk to you guys about my schedule and how I'm able to fit in reading as much. But with saying that, I want to tell you guys, I don't read to read a specific amount of books. In fact, the fact that I finished as many books as I have actually astounds me, because last year, in the entirety of the year, I probably read maybe 10 to 15 books the entire year. So obviously we have blown that out of the water. I read because I love to read, not because anybody is pressuring me to read, not because I feel pressured by social media to read, and not because I put a specific goal on myself either. In fact, my Goodreads goal for this year actually started out at 50 books, and I've just increased it from there as I've met the goal. So I just wanted to say that first, I don't think that reading a specific amount of books is better or worse than reading a smaller amount of books, and I don't think that book creators or people who are self-proclaimed readers or people who love to read need to read a specific amount of books per year. Again, we're all different. Any amount that you read is okay and incredible in my eyes. So, walking you through how I am able to read as much as I am, I start my day around 6:30 in the morning, and that gives me about 10 minutes to get myself ready before I need to get my daughter ready for drop off to be out the door at 7. I end up coming back in at around 7:30, and that is when I start my reading for the day. When I come in, I immediately just go to my couch. I pick up my current read because I like to start my days off slow. I'm not somebody who wants to start my day off immediately just going to work out or going to do anything like that. Again, it's all about priorities, and honestly, it'd probably be better if I was working out in the morning or doing something like that. But right now, I choose to read. It's what works for me. It makes me happy just to start off my day in whatever world I'm reading about, and it just grounds me and lets me feel like I have a relaxing start to my day. I generally have about half an hour before my son wakes up and I need to get him out the door to go to preschool. So before I even see 8:30 in the morning, I'm already clocking in 30 to 40 minutes of reading. I don't generally pick up a book again until lunchtime. By that time, I have been able to pick up my son from preschool, which I pick him up around 12. I make lunch for both of us, and around 1 p.m., we sit down and we eat our lunch. My husband sometimes joins us, and the last part of our little lunch break, I would call, because I do give myself a lunch break. Generally, while my son is at preschool, that is when I am cleaning the house or really getting things done. Right now, we're getting ready for a move, so that's my time to pack. Or if I'm filming, generally I film while he is at school, so I have about a 3-ish hour window to get all of that done. And so I'm not normally reading during that time, but once I pick him up, we have lunch. We normally go out and sit on our front porch and we just chill, basically. And during that time, I probably get another 15-ish minutes of reading to 20 minutes of reading done, if I'm able to get any reading done at all. And then we hop in the car and we go pick up my daughter from school. And by we, I mean me and my son. Generally, I'm doing quite a bit of driving to and from just different drop-offs. Obviously, I have 2 drop-offs per day. I have 2 pickups per day. And I would say about 50% of the time, I'm probably listening to an audiobook. I've been a little bit out of my audiobook era, but if I am listening to an audiobook, I'm generally listening to it on like 2x speed. That's just how my brain works. And if I am listening to one, I can probably get half an hour to an hour's worth of listening by the time I have picked up my daughter. So that's another way that I get my reading in. After that, when I come home, that is time to play with my kids, to get dinner ready. I don't generally read during that time unless we go to a park right after pickup. I normally go to our local park where I can see everything and it's fenced in. There's generally not a lot of people there. So because of that, I feel comfortable bringing a book along, and I probably get about 20 minutes of reading done at the park. Other than that, I'm probably just watching them and playing with them at the park, so that's another way that I get some reading in. After that, I am just continuing with my normal duties as a mom, as a wife, as a stay-at-home partner. And generally from there, I'm not able to get a ton of reading done. Sometimes if my kids are playing really well together and they go upstairs, then I'm able to get my cooking done. And if I'm just watching a pot, then sometimes I'll literally be holding a book as I'm like stirring a pot. A lot of this you'll hear is me just finding ways to read throughout what I'm already doing throughout the day. And a lot of other people who might say that they don't have time to read are just filling that time with other things. For example, I really try hard not to scroll on my phone, and instead of doing that, I'm reading. So the pockets of the day where someone else might be scrolling on their phone, or someone else might be watching their favorite show, or someone else might be out and about doing XYZ, that's when I'm reading. If I go to a coffee shop in the morning, for example, like some people do, if I'm not working, I'm reading. Or even if I am working, I try to carve out at least 10 minutes while I'm there to read. So generally from dinner time on until bedtime, we have dinner around 5:30ish, and then I put my kids down at 7 because obviously we have early wake ups and they are quite young. I have a 3 and a 6-year-old. It's just what works for our family. We put our kids down. My husband is somebody who likes to game, and I actually like that he likes to do that. I know some people really don't like that. For me, I enjoy it because it gives me a chance to sit on the couch with him and we just get to coexist but get to do our own hobbies. So generally, I'm laying on the couch, like my head's on this side and my feet are in his lap as he does his gaming on this TV, and I read. I would probably say I get another at least hour, if not hour and a half to 2 hours of reading. And then at that time, we end up watching a show together. Right now, we're doing our kind of annual or every other year rewatch of the show Sherlock from BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch. It is just a fall show for us that we love to watch together. There are times in my life where we have enjoyed gaming together, even if I'm not a big person like picking up the controller or anything. I like to watch. But in the past few months, there hasn't really been a game that I've been interested in. We played our way through all of the Zelda games, and I was so hooked on that. We played the Hogwarts game. I loved that. But ever since then, I haven't really had a game come out that I've really been hooked on watching him play. And so because of that, I just sit and I read. And then, we have some time together where we try to be really intentional, where we end the night either watching a show show, or just talking, having some time together before we end up going to bed. Probably later than 10:30 or 11, just because I do have quite an early wake up with my kids. And that is how I am able to fit in reading pockets throughout the day. And so again, I really do feel like it just depends on your own hobbies. This is really my only hobby, and that is why I feel like I'm able to read so much. Generally, I have found that if I read a physical book, if I'm sitting down and reading for an hour, so 60 minutes, I'm able to get 70 to 80 pages read within that time. So a little bit over a page a minute. And so that is how I'm able to work myself through a lot of books. I generally read 300 to 500 page books, and so you can kind of see just from doing that math how I'm able to get to the number I am. On the weekends, I'm able to get a bit more reading done just because I feel like Saturdays and Sundays we have slow mornings where the kids just have free play throughout our house. Tim will game and I'll read, or if we do something as a family, obviously I'm not reading if we go out somewhere to a park or anything like that. But again, reading is my hobby, and so it's what I prioritize, and I still love it even though I read that much. Now, the burning question is, do I think this is sustainable? I'm going to be honest with you, no. Obviously, in past years, like last year, I read 20 books in an entire year. I just think that's what works for me now. Do I think that it will always be my only hobby? No. I have other goals for myself where as soon as we get to moving, we're going to have access to a gym in the place that we live, and I do want to spend time for myself going to the gym. But I do feel like it's one of those things that if I'm walking on the treadmill, I'm going to bring my Kindle because that's going to be what I like. Or if I'm lifting, then I'll be listening to an audiobook. But I know that not everybody likes multitasking like that, so I can see why people wouldn't like to do that, but that's just me. Again, I don't know that this is going to be sustainable. For example, I just feel like there will be times coming up where a show will come out that my husband and I really want to watch, and so I won't get any reading done at night, or a game will come out, or when both of my kids are in the same school, I really want to be able to volunteer a lot more. Right now, since I'm kind of running back and forth between both schools, I'm only able to volunteer during sometimes. I think that as that goes on, I will have less time, but for right now, that's just how it works. I also want to acknowledge like my privilege to be a stay-at-home mom. I know that that's not everybody's reality to be able to stay home while their partner works, and so I obviously have to give credit where credit is due and say that because that is my lifestyle, I'm able to read a little bit more. But I do want to ram home that just because I am a stay-at-home mom, that does not mean I'm sitting on this couch reading all day. It does not. Again, I'm taking my kids places, I'm being a mom, I'm trying to be present, I'm keeping a clean house because for me, that's what I like to do. Since I'm able to stay home, I want to have a house where my kids come home and it's clean. And you know, just that feeling you get in a clean house, you're able to just relax instead of looking around and being like, oh, there's such a mess, I have to do this, I have to do that. I also want to be cooking more at home, and so I spend my time doing that. And I also do YouTube, so I try to push out 2 videos a week, which if you've ever done YouTube, it is time consuming. It takes me at least 2 hours probably from start to finish to edit each video, and then that doesn't include the time that I'm filming, it doesn't include the time that I'm reading. It takes some time to plan videos and different things like that, but that's just kind of giving you guys an insight into what I do as somebody who does YouTube, and I do a bit of TikTok as well. Hopefully that helps and kind of just helps you see and maybe understand a little bit more about people who read as much as I do, and just get a peek inside of our world, because I know people can be quite critical and just being like, well, you must not do anything else. To be fair, when it comes to hobbies, it is true. That is my only hobby. I don't do anything else. Like when people watch reality TV at night or any type of show, or if they're big into watching movies, if they're big into working out, if they're big into hanging out with their friends every night, that's not really me. I do have my core friend group, but we're all moms, and so we get to see each other maybe one time a week and we just text and meet up that way. Just at my point in life, it's not feasible for me to do that. And again, there are just things that I could prioritize better, like working out or going to classes and things like that I don't prioritize right now that I want to in the future. And that just gives me more time to read. That is what it is. Obviously, being a fast reader helps me because those pockets of time, I'm processing a lot in these books that I'm reading that maybe other people having the same amount of time that I would perhaps aren't reading as fast as I am. I will say I've always been a pretty fast reader. I've been somebody I was totally that kid who my parents were telling me to put down the book and to be present, because that is just who I've always been. And as I've grown and since I've gotten married and had kids, obviously I've read less, and this is just me rekindling my love for reading, but that love has always been there, and I have always defined myself as a reader and as someone who loves to read, and it's very clear to the people in my life that that is the case. However, I do have some tangible tips as to what has helped me read better. First things first, this might be obvious, don't multitask. Don't do it. I'm not somebody who tries to read while my kids are like playing around me. First of all, I want to be present, but even if I was, I wouldn't be able to process it, because I know myself, and just like having my kids ask me questions and things like that and having to stop, I feel like my reading quality would go down and it would also make it a lot slower. So I really try to read when I have just like a peaceful environment around me, or if I'm able to focus. Because even if my environment, if there's things around me, for example, I go to a coffee shop that's a little bit loud, if I'm there by myself, that still lends to me being able to focus on what I'm doing. And another thing I would say is sometimes when I go to a coffee shop or when I'm going somewhere that I like the ambiance but don't like the noise, I bring noise canceling headphones, and that really helps me to just get in the story. Probably one of my biggest tips would be, if you are somebody who hears your voice saying the words while you're reading, I think it's called sub-vocalizing, if I'm not wrong on that, that slows you down. And if that is what you need to do to comprehend, then there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a slower reader. There is literally nothing wrong with that. This is only my advice if you are somebody who wants to read quicker. I notice that when I'm sub-vocalizing in my head, I'm reading slower. I know that that is a hard habit to break. It's not a bad habit, but if you want to break that habit, you can. And I feel like it's just being intentional of letting your gaze smoothly just move across the page and just taking in those words without speaking them in your head, if that makes sense. That's not going to make sense to everybody, and it's because it's also not going to be possible for everybody. But if you find that you are able to read without sub-vocalizing, I do feel like that is helpful. Another thing I would say is I have seen some people who set a pacer for their reading. For example, if they're reading on their Kindle or reading on their phone, they're able to just like have it moving. And that also will help you to move faster when you read, to read faster. That is something I would recommend for people who are actively trying to teach themselves to read faster, because then you'll see a certain pace that you'd have to read. I would recommend just turning it up slowly over time. You never want to get to a point where you're not understanding what you're reading, because that takes out the enjoyment of it. So just turning that up slowly. Another thing is maybe less advice, but just a note for myself. Something that I realized for myself is I'm using my, what's that called? Peripheral vision to read faster. I'm taking in like 2 to 5 words at a time versus 1 word at a time as I'm reading. And as a YouTuber, it's been funny to film myself reading, because I see my eyes just moving so quickly and I'm like, I look crazy. But it is true. I use my peripherals to read, and as I'm reading a paragraph, I'm taking in not just each word, sub-vocalizing it at a time, but my gaze is moving smoothly over it, because I'm using not only just the specific word that my eyes are seeing, but I'm seeing the whole context at the same time versus word to word. And I think that will come with that advice of like turning on that pacer, having your Kindle move slowly rather than just staying on a static page. My last piece of advice for you is going to be somewhat obvious, but some of you need to hear it. Read what you want to read. Read what interests you. Read what's addicting to you. Because you know what? I have found myself reading slowly when I realize that it is a book that I'm just not interested in, or the writing just isn't vibing with me. Give yourself the permission to DNF something that you are not finding addicting, you are not finding super interesting, you're not finding page turning. So I think that just goes to question is, maybe you're not a slow reader, maybe you're just not fully addicted to what you're reading, and you need to just experiment with other genres until you find that specific genre of books that you find addicting, that you cannot put down. I would say analyze the books that you could not put down, that you had to know what happened next, the books that you've read the fastest, and you could even ask ChatGPT for recommendations, but go from there in asking for recommendations. Like, if I liked this, what should I read next? Whether that's going on TikTok and writing for fans of, for example, if it's Magnolia Parks, write for fans of Magnolia Parks, and you'll get so many recommendations. And I think it's just practice, because if you start with books like that, over time, your average reading speed is going to increase anyway, because you're kind of teaching your brain to process a little bit quicker, and that'll just help you with other books that you're reading as well. That always helps me, and I've noticed the books I fly through the quickest are because I just am enjoying them so much. So keep that in mind. That is probably going to be my best advice for you, and that is also going to bring us to the end of today's video. Reading speed is not everything, and also, again, if you need the reminder, you are not less of a reader just because you read less than somebody else, just because you read slower than somebody else. It is not a competition. The whole point of reading is to enjoy what you're reading, to be able to experience different things. I think reading is just the coolest hobby because you get to experience different worlds. You get to fall in love so many times with so many different people. And it's just a really, really special thing to be a reader and to be somebody who is capable of putting yourself in the perspectives of other people, whether that's fictional or real people. I believe that people who read and learn how to put themselves in the perspective of other people, fictional or not, are able to become just more tolerant people, because that trait ends up lending itself to other areas of your life and just makes you a more tolerant, empathetic human being. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed this kind of sit down chat video with me. If you found these tips helpful, let me know. If you find yourself having any extra questions about how I read, my specific schedule as a mom, or the books that helped me really fall in love with reading, I'd love to share those with you. And if you made it to the end of this video, leave the book stack emoji. I always feel so grateful to the people who I see leave those emojis, because I'm like, oh, this person stayed till the end. Like, I love that, and I'm so grateful. Thank you guys so much for being here. Truly, I feel so special that anybody even watches my videos. I don't have that big of a following, but everybody that's here, you're so special to me. I'm not even kidding you. Like, it really, I can't describe to you what it feels like that you care about what I have to say. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you guys hopefully in my next video. Bye. Have mercy, my mom brain today. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I really need to start eating something before I film, because I'm literally starving.